Yo, what up, YouTube? This is the Dirt Road with Mike.
Mr. Rick here.
What's happening, pal? That's our Dirt Road behind
farm.
us. Like we always say, it's the Dirt Road because we know where we're going to start, but we have no idea where we're going to end. And today we are going to start with one of the biggest things. Well, we're going to talk in general about the campaign. We're just a little over 2 weeks from Election Day. Hopefully we know the results on Election Day, but that's not looking too good from everything I read, but who knows. Hopefully we don't have to wait 3, 4, 5 days. But anyway, we're about 2 weeks out, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
And Vice President Kamala Harris did an interview on Fox News the other day. We both watched it. I watched it for you, our 42 viewers. I had no interest in watching
43,
that.
43.
26, depending on the video.
Yeah. Depending on how many people watch. But we have like 43 subscribers now.
I'm just kidding. I do watch these things. I am a political junkie. I love politics. I love history. And, whatever happens, it is history, right? All right. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to give my general thoughts about the interview. Not really very specific. Then Mike's going to do the same, maybe a couple of minutes each. And then we'll get into some specifics. I got the transcript up. And then we're going to just get into the...
general campaign update.
Yeah, the general idea of the campaign. So as far as the interview goes, I'm going to start with the positive things about her because that's the shorter list. So I can get that done in a couple of seconds. Number one, the fact that she went on Fox is something that Biden has never done. And at least she had the guts to do it. I mean, she went on and she's putting herself in a situation that she knows is not going to be extremely friendly. And, she's trying to talk to people that Biden just has openly said he doesn't give a shit about. Yeah. He's called you and me, every name in the book.
Oh, yeah.
As voters. And I will give her a lot of credit for that. So she went from not doing any interviews. Now she's kind of hit the interview circuit. And I give her credit. She went on Fox News. I don't know if you remember back in 2016, Bernie Sanders went to Liberty University, Jerry Falwell's university.
Yeah.
And spoke to the students there. And I thought that was just... this is before he became what he is now. This is when he was the authentic Bernie Sanders. The authentic...
The original communist, not the fake one that he is now?
Well, forget the communist. He was just the Bernie Sanders that had no loyalty to the Democratic Party and was Bernie Sanders. And
yeah,
he was willing...
brand back then, yeah.
He went into a hostile territory there. I mean, he's a Jewish liberal from New York, and he went into Liberty University and spoke to the kids. And the kids there were very respectful. They listened. Of course, as they should be. Anyway, so, she went into, I guess, what would be called hostile territory, and she did. One other positive, and the only other thing that I thought was a positive, is another thing that she does very different than Joe Biden. Bret Baier really tried to kind of trap her into a basket of deplorables moment. When he said to her something, I'll paraphrase instead of looking at the transcript here, he said, Madam Vice President, why then are 50% of Americans willing to vote for Donald Trump if he's so terrible? And then he said something like, are they stupid? Are they bad people? Like trying to get her to say yes and have her...
Yeah, and trap her in that comment, yeah.
And again, to her credit, she didn't fall for the bait. She said, no, I would never say anything like that. Elections are supposed to be hard. And that, I thought, was commendable because, again, Joe Biden has done nothing but call us stupid and fascist and horrible, horrible people. She avoided that. So those were the positives. Again, I told you my list was going to be short.
Yeah, I agree. Those are two good positives, definitely. She definitely went to enemy territory.
Now...
And that I hate the gotcha questions, man. With these
I don't like
I can't stand them. I think they're stupid. Just stop.
I do too.
Just stop.
So now my overall kind of view on it, just real quickly. I don't think she did herself any favors because she went in, again, going on to Fox. The whole idea is, I would imagine, to try to convince some Fox viewers, hey, I'm not that bad. I'm not this person Trump is making me out to be. Here are my ideas. Here's what I want to do, and try to get a couple of votes. Why else would you go on? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And she did not do that. She spent, I don't know, I'll make it up, 90% of the time attacking Trump, which is fine. That's what she's supposed to do. He's supposed to attack us. She's supposed to attack him. But again, if she's going... This is just what I was thinking, Mike. I mean, it's my own opinion. If she's going on Fox with the only goal I could think of would be to try to reach Fox viewers and hope she could peel a couple in and out and say, hey, I'm not this terrible thing that Trump's making me out to be. Here's my thoughts, here's my ideas, here's what I want to do. But she spent so much time attacking Trump on a network that's viewed mostly by people, if not Trump supporters, somewhat sympathetic to Trump, that she didn't accomplish that goal. She didn't really tell us anything new. She didn't tell us any policies. So I thought overall it was a failure on her part. I thought the goal was great, but I think she failed miserably in that. And I'm just also, nothing against Bret Baier or her personally, just my own personal taste. I'm not a fan of confrontational interviews. I don't think interviews should be confrontational. I think the interviewer should ask tough, good questions.
Sure.
I think if the person is dodging the questions, you ask it again. A good follow-up. But I didn't like the whole idea of showing videos of, parents of people who were killed by illegal aliens and videos. I wasn't impressed with Bret Baier either, but I wasn't impressed with her. So anyway, those are my main thoughts. Now, what about you?
I agree with you. I think, like I just said, I don't like the gotcha question crap. The videos are stupid. Don't do that. Ask honest, legitimate questions. Ask tough questions. Follow up on those questions. And trying to elicit some kind of response. Trying to elicit, their actual policy thoughts, their actual policy feelings. This should be about the policies that they're going to advocate for and work towards. That's what this should be about. It should be informing the American public about what they can expect from this person if they vote for them. And instead what we get is these gotcha moments and these virtue signal moments on both sides do it. And I think it's ridiculous and stupid and wasteful. It's just time wasting. And that said, she shows up to the interview 17 minutes later, something like that. She's unprepared. She tried to dodge every question given to her. She really didn't want to answer questions. She really didn't want to do anything.
No, everything was about Trump.
Oh, that's just it. Yeah, she didn't answer any questions. She just, well, Trump is running too. Or Trump has been running for 10 years.
Or everything was Trump's fault.
Yeah, everything's Trump's fault.
Which again is fine at a campaign rally. That's what you should do.
If you're talking to your base and that's what you're doing, to fire up your base, whatever, that's your business. But, this is your chance to try and kind of pull some people from the middle, pull some people from what they consider to be his camp or whatever, and actually show people, look, I can be a responsible, intelligent adult, and I have that leadership trait and quality where I can step outside the box of this nonsense and sit here and talk to you directly about what I think, how I feel, and why I feel that way. And she just flubbed the entire thing. She had a great opportunity, and she completely bombed it. Completely bombed it.
I agree.
And the contrast could not be worse for her. So you have her on video on this interview just looking absolutely awful, not looking presidential at all, not looking even leadership-like at all. And then on top of that, after the interview's done, you've got Bret Baier on all these different talking head shows talking about her campaign staff staying off to the side and waving and frantically waving to end the interview because it was going so badly because she was already late. Yeah. They cut it off early because her campaign staff went nuts because she was flubbing it.
Because he agreed, remember, to not edit anything, right? To leave it as it is. So he needed the time to do that. And again, I didn't like the way he handled the whole thing, again, the videos and all of that. But
I agree.
To his defense, the man planned a certain thing.
And they screwed him on it, yeah.
Yeah, so look, if there was some real reason why she was late, but I would think that a campaign can, you were a New York City cop, Fox is in New York, they close down streets and let these people
through. So she's the vice president. She's the vice president. She wasn't
stuck on 6th Avenue.
No, she's not sitting in traffic. Look, she's the vice president. They're going to shut streets down for her when she moves. It's no different than the president. When the president moves, they shut down the streets. They do the same thing for her.
So, Mike, 8 million people watched, roughly 7.9.
Okay,
that's the third biggest TV audience she's gotten in the campaign. The convention speech.
Right.
The debate.
Yep.
And this was the third largest. And again, this is one I agree with you. She really flubbed it because she had an opportunity to sit there and, like you say, look presidential. And again, I'm sure if you were a Kamala Harris fan, you loved it, right? Because she was combative, she was Trump sucks, she was all that. But again, to me, that's for the political rally. If you're going
for your base.
Yeah, right, exactly. So if you're going to go on Fox News, you're supposed to be trying to convince people who are kind of leaning towards Trump and haven't gotten there yet as to why they should maybe vote for you. And she really didn't give any reasons. And again, I'm not saying this in a biased way just because I'm a Trump supporter. I'm saying this because it's a fact. She just didn't. Everything was about Trump. again, I didn't like Bret Baier with the videos and are you going to say you're sorry? I mean, that's not an interview
question.
It's
just stupid.
Do you owe them an apology? It's not an interview
No,
question.
that's a gotcha nonsense crap. That's for clickbait. That's
but she should have. I always say it about Trump. And people get mad at me, right? When you say the press is biased, and I say, well, he's just got to rise above it. She needed to rise above Bret Baier. She needed to rise above those things, and she didn't. She went lower. And I don't think she did herself any favors. Did she hurt her campaign? Probably not, but she didn't help it.
Yeah. You know who, just as far as the whole political thing, in recently, when you want to look at like someone giving a master class on how to rise above it and how to actually do these interviews and do all these things, J.D. Vance.
100%.
He's professional, 100%. He's articulate, he's polite. And he just, he brings it back to the question. He fights, and he doesn't back off. He doesn't.
Oh, not at all.
But he does it in a way that's professional. It makes you feel like, that guy can lead. That guy knows how to take a very tough situation or conversation and make it happen with the least amount of friction. Yep. That guy, I have faith in. That guy, I would follow.
Yeah, he's really set himself up well for 2028.
Oh yeah.
Whether he wins or loses this election
doesn't matter. At 28, he's still going to be the guy.
I think he's going to be the front runner.
Look how well spoken he's been. Look at how he's built his own base. Honestly, within the MAGA base, he's built his own base like very, very quickly. He's really become like the guy in a lot of ways. Yeah. So
look, I want to give a credit again where credit's due. Just to have the Gouillons to get on there was.
No, listen, I get it. It wasn't a bad idea.
She didn't fall for the bait. To try to get her to say a basket of deplorable sort of moment. She got around that.
Yeah.
But other than that, no. I do want to say one thing, though. I've been thinking a lot about what you said a couple of weeks. I think it was last week when we were here. And again, I was saying what a good campaign she's running. And I do think overall it's a good campaign. But I do think, remember when I said it at first, I said, at the moment, I said that could change at the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's all snapshots in time, sure.
Yeah, so I don't know that the campaign's as great as it was. I still think, again, just the fact that she's even competitive
it's a testament to how hard our campaign staff is working, yeah.
But I do remember you saying, and I think we were kind of talking past each other, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought you were right. I kept saying she's a good candidate, she's a good candidate, she's a good candidate. But I guess it's how you define, candidate.
Yeah.
I think you're right in the sense that she's not really portraying herself as anything other than, I'm not Trump, right? She's not giving people a reason to vote for. I do think she's doing a good job with the not getting into the lowbrow shit and all of that sort of stuff. But as a candidate, meaning somebody who instills confidence,
no.
I do have to say, you were right. I was talking about something a little bit different. Maybe we were talking past each other.
I think so.
I don't think she's a really good candidate in that sense. People might say the same thing about Trump in some ways, but I think that she doesn't have a coherent sort of a... All right, let me put it to you this way. So if somebody is a good candidate, then anybody, for her or against her, or for him or against him, should be able to, in a couple of minutes, articulate something about that person and their policies that they admire, that they like, and that they want to vote for. And I don't really know, I haven't even heard Harris supporters really be able to do that. Really be able to say, here's, in a nutshell, is why I think she would be a good president. So in that sense, I think you're right. I think I'm right, too. I think the campaign has been a very good, well-run campaign.
She's got a good campaign. Yeah, I think bad candidate, but good campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gone a little bit downhill because at some point, she's just got to start answering the questions about what she would do differently than Biden. She dodged that from Bret Baier. She even dodged that on the friendly interviews, on The View and on Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
She can't just say, I'm a different person. We all know she's a different person, right? I think she would do herself a much better service if she would just say, you know what, I wasn't president. Joe Biden did the best he could, but I think he made a mistake here, here, and here, and I would do that differently. Just pick something. Immigration.
There's so many ways you could go with that. Yeah. You could say, listen, that was his administration. I was there to serve under him, and it was his choices. He made his choices. I stand behind him, and I support him, and he's a great man.
You don't need to throw him
under the bus. And he did the best he could do. But, here's what I would do now. If I win this election and you vote me in, here's what I'm going to do. And it's not about, don't even make it about being different or not different. Just say, here's what I'm going to do. Because now you're personalizing it. You're saying, okay, Biden's out of the picture now. Now look at me.
Right.
And you personalize that for people, and you say, here's what I'm going to do.
And
you spell out your policies.
So her only answer in the interview to that was, my presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's. And again, that's duh. I mean, we know that, right?
That's like, you're stating the obvious without really saying anything. That's right. The dodge. She's very practiced at dodging questions, right? Yeah. She's very practiced at giving a non-answer.
Which all politicians are.
Sure, absolutely. You have to be to a certain degree, right? Because there's all kinds of, well, again, we talk about the gotcha questions, right? So you have to be somewhat practiced at it. I mean, J.D. Vance has done it numerous times. They all do it. But at the end of the day, you've got to come back with some substance at some point. You've got to be able to point to something and say, here's what I plan to do, especially in a presidential race. This isn't, your local congressional race or something like that where you can kind of rest on party line nonsense and just kind of go from there. It's a presidential race, and it just doesn't seem like she has that in her head that this is a presidential race and she has to be presidential.
Yeah,
she's just
I think she's still banking too much on what I said a few weeks ago.
Yeah, she's not Trump.
And that's going to work to a certain extent. There's going to be a certain...
You're going to get that hardcore base that just hates Trump that's going to come out for you. But that's not enough to win a race. That's just not enough to win a race. You're just not going to win with that. You're not. You're really not. You don't have COVID, boosting your sales like Biden did. You don't have a lot of things to turn to that are going to kind of boost your number. You got to be able to put some substance and fight in there, and she doesn't have it. She doesn't listen. Her campaign staff, God bless them, they're kicking ass for her. They really are. But it amazes me they've gotten as far as they have with her like that. But, they're doing the best they can.
It has.
She's an awful candidate. She has a great campaign staff, but she's an awful candidate.
I don't know if I go as far as to say awful, but I do agree with you. When I said she's a good candidate, I don't know. I think there's a lot of reasons why I think that in some ways. And we were talking about this upstairs. She has a great built-in benefit. I thought when this first happened that she's in a lot of trouble because she's so connected to the Biden presidency that she's not going to be able to escape that.
Right, yeah.
But in a way, the opposite is true also, right? Because Biden is just so profoundly bad. So not only a horrible president, but a horrible candidate and just terrible in so many ways that just by not being him, she does look good compared to him.
Right, and the comparison is there, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, she could distance herself in a lot of ways, and she did. And she did it. That was the effective media campaign she had right out the gate. When she became the nominee, right out the gate, it was, okay, all these problems are Biden's, and here's the savior. And it worked to a certain degree. Look at the numbers and the polling.
Sure.
It obviously had an impact,
Sure.
They rebranded her.
So in the interview with Bret Baier, when he asked her about the economy, right? And again, she's never really given a good straight answer about that. I mean, she gives all little things like, I'm going to give $25,000 for this, and now she's got this thing where she wants to give black entrepreneurs a $20,000 forgivable loan, and blah blah blah.
Loan.
But these are not plans, right? These are not plans.
No, those are stimulus nonsense give-outs. Right. So they're going to increase inflation because you got to print more money to do.
Which again, Trump also. I'm not going to tax tips. Obviously, he's talking to a certain type of person.
No tax on Social Security.
But anyway, so in her answer here, she said, my plans for the economy will strengthen the economy. Well, thank you, Kamala. Great. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy. And she says that these have been reviewed by, and here we go with the expert stuff again, 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plan and indicated that Trump's would ignite inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Well, the Wall Street Journal, Kamala, they actually write every day. Mark Twain had a good quote. I think it might be apocryphal, but it's attributed to him. He said, don't ever start a fight with someone who uses ink by the barrel. Because they will always be able to get you, right? So she claimed that the Wall Street Journal endorsed her economic plan and that they agreed that Trump would ignite inflation. Well, in Saturday's Wall Street Journal, they said in the editorial, to clarify, the journal did not endorse her economic plan. She was referring to a journal news story this week that reported that 68% of 50 economists who were surveyed said that prices would rise faster under Trump. So in other words, the Wall Street Journal printed a news story that said that there were 50 economists who were interviewed, and 68% of them believed that Trump would increase inflation higher than Harris. That is not the Wall Street Journal endorsing Kamala Harris's economic plan. So she outright lied. This is not a quote-unquote fact check. This is just the Wall Street Journal defending themselves.
Yeah, because they don't want to be misquoted. Absolutely.
Right. So, they came right back at her, and they also said that they never said, and this is what's interesting, the Wall Street Journal's mainly an economic paper, obviously, but by the name. So they were explaining that because they're against Trump's tariffs. I mean, they were corporate newspaper.
It's Wall Street. So
They're not. The Wall Street Journal is not. First of all, they don't endorse presidential candidates.
No,
they haven't. The last time they endorsed a presidential candidate was 1928. They probably learned their lesson. They endorsed. 1932. They endorsed Herbert Hoover. So they probably learned their lesson, and they don't endorse candidates. But they do talk a lot about economic issues, and they do endorse economic plans and so forth. They made it clear they weren't endorsing hers. They also made it clear that she was lying when she said the Wall Street Journal said that Trump's economic policies will increase inflation. They never did. No. What they said is that his tariffs will increase prices on that product, which is exactly what it will do. That's what a tariff does. Yeah. Just like a sales tax increases the price of something. Yeah. But that's not inflation. They never said that Trump's tariffs will... It's not the same thing at all. Inflation is a devaluation of your dollar is worth less. Yeah. It buys less than it did the day before. A tariff is
just adding another expense on top of what's already there.
It's a tax by definition, right? Yeah. So they clarified that, which I was very glad they did. And they clarified it without calling her a liar or this and that and the other thing. They just said, no. Here's what we said in this house. So, unfortunately, though, 8 million people watched that Fox News interview, and then God knows how many more millions saw clips of it on...
And got misinformation or whatever.
Right. So now they're under the impression that a great newspaper like the Wall Street Journal is endorsing her economic plan. But
our few dozen viewers or so will know the truth. Listen, she did the same thing. Remember when she talked about how the Wharton Business School or whatever, and some other business schools were endorsing her plan, and they all came out and they were like, actually, her plan would make the economy worse than his plan.
But you know what this is like, Mike?
And they didn't endorse either one, but they were saying no.
Remember when 50 former intelligence officials said
it's Russian disinformation, whatever crap?
Listen, you could find 50 anything to say anything.
Listen, all those clowns, those are deep state clowns, and every one of them knew. Right. They knew exactly what they were signing. They knew it was complete bogus nonsense.
No, I agree, but that wasn't my point. My point is that she could find Nobel laureates who agree with her.
Of course you can.
It's what's called a logical fallacy, Mike. It's what's called an appeal to authority. It's like saying, I'm right because this person who knows a lot about something thinks the same way I do. That's not logic.
No.
That's the opposite of logic. Logic is, here's why my plan is good, here's why it will work. It's not logical to say my plan is great because somebody who won a Nobel Prize thinks the same way I do.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
All right, so now how about to the rest of the campaign? Depending on when you're watching this, we're about 17 days out.
Yeah.
Right.
Today's 20th, so then 26th in New York. So about 6 days from today, early voting starts in New York.
Yep.
Get out early, vote early.
And election day is about 2 weeks and 4 days away. So I did read some other interesting stuff about the campaign. We were talking in our last video about how Trump has been seemingly getting more support from famous black people, especially athletes, male athletes.
Yep.
There was also something in the paper today. I was interested in what you thought about this. Again, there are groups that do vote in blocks. It's not racist to say so. It's not prejudiced to say so.
The Jewish community, the Hasidic Jewish community,
that's the one I was going to bring up. They do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean all, just like all black people don't vote a certain way. African Americans have historically been a very loyal voting bloc. They were very loyal to the Republican Party from the days of emancipation all the way up until around the New Deal. And then it kind of got a little half and half for a while. And then from the Civil Rights Act on, they've been very loyal to the Democratic Party.
Right.
Again, that doesn't mean all, but they do. African Americans have been a loyal voting bloc for the
majority of them, right?
Yeah. A huge majority. Jewish Americans as well tend to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
But there was an article in today's paper that those polls have changed drastically among Jewish Americans, and that there's a lot more Jewish support for Trump now than there was. I have a thought about this, but I want you to go first. Do you think that's important?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
That's a huge block of people, and they're very politically aligned. So, synagogue, for the Jewish community, you know, it's very much a community place, and it's where they pass information about all kinds of things. You know, it's not just, you know, the faith and the prayers and stuff. This is where they talk business, honestly.
Well, when you say huge, you don't mean. I mean, they're only 2% of the population. You mean huge in influence?
Huge in influence,
right?
Because they do vote in a block.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they will listen to the rabbi. They will listen to those faith leaders and those leaders in their communities.
As do a lot of Christians, right?
Well, Christians do too, but I think it's a little bit more disseminated with Christians. I think the Jewish communities are pretty strong, tightly knit.
Mm-hmm.
But again, look at the history, right? The recent history in the 40s, you know, they kind of have to be kind of tightly knit still.
Of course, yeah.
You know, they've learned a hard lesson, unfortunately, from that. So,
now, do you think part of this has to do with Kamala Harris's stance on the Israeli-Arab conflicts going on?
I think part of it's that, definitely, right? The whole pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party probably didn't help their cause with the Jews any. But again, I think that it's also the fact that these people are you know, they're business people, they're working people, same as me or you. They're feeling the economy the same way everybody else does.
Sure,
you know,
sure,
so that's got to have a part to play in it too. So there's probably a lot of reasons why they're shifting, but I do think that the Republican Party in general, you know, is kind of becoming the party of the working class again,
yeah,
where it should have been really originally. And the Democrats have become like the party of the elites. So I think it's kind of reversed in that way.
I agree with you. At least it's shifting in that direction.
It's starting to.
Now, again, we're not talking about just like with African American support. I mean, we're talking, you know, 15% support Trump, but it might not sound like a lot, and it's not. It's small,
but historically,
but it's double.
Historically, that's a huge number historically.
So the same thing with the Jewish population. It had gone down to something like 60% now supporting Harris, as opposed to like 80% who historically.
I want to see the actual, like, when the elections. I'm really curious to see, you know, after the election, what those numbers look like.
Yeah, the exit polls will tell us a little bit more about that.
I want to see what the numbers look like after the election, because I think it's going to be interesting to see.
Here was my thought on that, Mike. I think it's interesting, and I think it's indicative of this shift. And like I had said, I do think that the wind is at Trump's back. I'm not predicting a win. I don't predict things, and you know, at all. I don't know anything more than anybody else. The only thing I thought of when I read this is that I don't think it's going to make any difference in the election, because the Jewish population in America is not spread out. It's very concentrated in New York and Florida. And New York is not going to vote for Trump, and Florida is not going to vote for Harris. And that's why I thought it's an interesting thing. I think it shows a kind of pattern that's going on when more and more minorities are, and again, it's a small amount, but it's way more than they had in the past. I don't think electorally this is going to make a dent, because, again, New York has a huge concentration of the Jewish population. They're voting, New York's going to vote for Harris, and Florida has a huge Jewish population. They're voting for Trump. Yeah. So I don't think it's going to make a difference in the election. What do you think of my thought?
Well, you're probably right. I mean, I'd like to see New York go red. I think it'd be great to see.
I'd like it too, but it's not.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that there's enough of a. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's definitely got the momentum. Mm-hmm. He's definitely got the momentum.
But as far as the Jewish vote, what do you think of my thought about that?
It kind of cancels each other out, right? I think Jewish populations in America, especially, are starting to wake up to the realities of the world. Right? I think October 7th, unfortunately, was a really harsh lesson for them. And I mean, you combine that with the last year or so of the anti-Jewish pro-Hamas protests you've seen, especially in New York, right? We had tremendous amounts of them in New York, and we had these Ivy League professors or whatever pushing these protests and going to these protests and pushing this anti-Semitic crap. So I think that's all been kind of a catalyst to kind of shift that electorate the other way. They're realizing their party left them behind, basically. Yeah. Not so much they're becoming Republicans, so much as they got left behind by the extremism in their own party.
I mean, that's possible. Yeah, I think you're right. It might not be as much about support for Trump as just less and less support for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, so I don't know if they're going to necessarily come out and vote Trump, a lot of them. The 60% or so that they're saying that are still Democrat or whatever. I mean, they may not come out and vote Trump, but I don't think they're necessarily going to run to the polls to vote Harris either.
And that's why the polls are kind of, iffy. We don't really know, right?
Because they're kind of skewed. Yeah, it's you can't
just
really
because
tell.
A lot of African Americans, a lot of Jewish Americans, a lot of people like that are saying that they're not going to vote Democrat and they're kind of leaning towards Trump. It doesn't mean they're actually going to go out and vote, but they may not vote. And if they don't vote,
then
that's like a vote for Trump.
Yeah, it's like it becomes a vote for Trump because. You're taking a vote away from her. You're giving him that much more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm, but you got to remember, Trump is like when we talk about the Reagan Revolution, right?
Yeah.
Reagan didn't create it, right? Reagan was the right person at the right time because America was going in that direction.
And he rode the wave.
And he was a great spokesman for that kind of thought and everything. So it wasn't like Reagan changed people. The country was changing. I mean, even Jimmy Carter, was, I know everybody thinks of him as a liberal, but he was probably the most conservative Democrat we've had as president since Grover Cleveland. I mean, compared to Lyndon Johnson and FDR and Kennedy, I mean, he was not what we would now consider liberal. He was deregulating and things like that. So even under Carter, we saw a move towards the Reagan ideas.
Yep.
And then Reagan took that, obviously, and built it into a movement, into a revolution. Yeah. And it's kind of the same thing with Trump. Trump didn't just fall from the sky and all of a sudden, change. America's kind of little by little been going in this direction. Yeah. I mean, remember Pat Buchanan?
Yeah.
Back in the late 80s and early 90s, and then Ron Paul, and
yep.
even Sarah Palin, who was I'm never really a fan of, but she kind of had that star quality like Trump does in a way.
Yeah, she had like a mini version of it. Yeah, I guess you could say that, yeah.
So this kind of populism, because remember, Trump is not really a conservative. I mean, he's not in the traditional sense.
No, he's a centrist.
Anyway. He's not
he's a centrist. Yeah,
he's not a Paul Ryan conservative by any stretch, right? No. So this has kind of been building, and I think people have been moving in this direction. And even with Bernie Sanders, he had that popularity because he was a left-wing populist, but he was a populist. Like Trump is a right-wing populist. Yeah. So I think we're just seeing this shift in America that's kind of hard to define because we have this two-party system, and you have to kind of vote for one of those parties. And we're seeing some shift now, at least away from the traditional Democratic stuff was fine. This new Democratic stuff.
The progressive wing of the crazy,
Yeah, I just think a lot of people are starting to think this stuff is just too crazy for them.
Well, it is. I mean, look at the extremism of what they want to do. They're legitimately like pushing for like socialist platforms, censorship of other people, and like their policies are very much extreme. I mean, no matter how you cut the cards, they're very extreme.
Especially the cultural stuff.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And when you think about it, they only represent about 8 to 10% of the Democratic Party. That's legitimately how much the progressive part of that wing of that party represents. About 8 to 10% of their party. Mm-hmm. And you have that 8 to 10% that's very loud, very boisterous, very whatever, dragging the rest of the party further and further left. When you have the other, 80, 90% of the party going, wait a minute, we didn't sign on for this crap, and they keep getting left behind. And every month that goes by with every new, further left policy or further left idea they throw out there to try and fan up the base, you leave that much more your centrist and your regular people behind. But people continue
to vote for them, and now I think we're seeing,
Well, that's what I think is happening now. I think people are realizing, okay, I'm done voting for you.
And I think it's the cultural stuff, to be honest with you, because again, I think when it comes to
that's probably the most prevalent. Oh, that's the most in-your-face stuff. Yeah.
That's why I don't even think that the socialist and calling socialist this and that. I don't think that hits as hard. I think it's a lot of the transgender stuff and the stuff
it's like
going on
us
in
Nazis.
schools.
It doesn't hit really.
Right, exactly. I think the cultural stuff is the stuff that people could really kind of latch onto.
Yeah, but people don't want grown men dressed as women in the bathroom with their daughters.
Right, and that's why going back to Kamala Harris. And why I do kind of agree with you and think maybe I wasn't expressing myself right when I said she was a good candidate. To me, a good candidate is Bill Clinton, right? Bill Clinton was a great candidate.
Sure.
And I don't know if you remember,
excellent speaker.
He had what was called the Sister Soldier moment. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember. Right? Yeah.
So it was a vulgar rapper named Sister Soldier.
Yeah.
And Bill Clinton came out and said, "No, this is just not a good thing," right? And since then, people have said Democrats have to have a Sister Soldier moment where they say, no, this shit's going too far. I don't care that it's going to hurt me with my base. This can't be. And Bill Clinton kind of made that a thing. Kamala Harris has not done that yet. She needs to come out, in my opinion, and again, if I was advising her, she would have to come out and totally disassociate herself with some left-wing cultural nonsense, whether it's transitioning minors or anything like that. And she had an opportunity to do that on the Bret Baier show. She had the Bret Baier interview when he asked her about when she supported paying for prisoners to transition. Remember that?
Yes.
And her answer was, well, Bret, I follow the law. Okay, great. You follow the law, Kamala. Wonderful. But if you're going to be president, you're going to have a lot of influence over what the laws are. So she could have said right then and there, you know what, Bret?
I would advocate for XYZ. Right?
That was 5 years ago. I was running in a primary. I got caught up in that. I've thought about it over the last 5 years. You know what? That's a bridge too far. I'm not going to support that. And that could have been her sister soldier move. And she passed on it. And instead she just doubled down and said, no, I follow the law. What does that mean? I follow the law. She had an opportunity to come out and pick some crazy left-wing idea. Just pick one. And say, you know what? That's a bridge too far. I don't support that. Mm-hmm. She didn't. She passed.
Because, again, she flubbed the entire thing.
Yeah.
How many opportunities has she had like that? She's had
the whole campaign to do something like that, but on Fox News would have been the perfect place. That's my point.
And I mean, she had so many moments that would have been powerful moments for her to be able to really, bring a lot of people to her side that maybe she normally wouldn't get, or bring the independence back to her side that she needs.
Yeah. Just disassociate.
That one moment, and there's so many one moments like that, and her entire campaign has been like that. Yeah. That's why I say she's a bad candidate.
And I agree on that point. Yeah. That if she was a good candidate like Bill Clinton,
she would seize that moment.
She could have said, I'm going to be on Fox tonight. I'm going to pick one crazy left-wing thing that I supported in the past, and I'm going to disassociate myself from it. Yep. And she didn't. She passed on it. She could have, even with the Israeli stuff going on, if she saw that she's losing support in the Jewish community. Because I got to tell you something, Mike. This is the problem with left-wing lunatics. I don't like what Israel's doing, but I can't bring myself to really come out against it because I don't want to be associated with these crazy lunatics on college campuses, dressing up like Palestinians when they're little white kids and everything, and intimidating Jewish students.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
And I honestly agree with, in principle, what they're saying, that Israel's going too far and killing innocent people and innocent civilians, but I can't associate with them, She needed to do something like that. Like, she could have even said, listen, maybe we have some differences with how Israel is doing stuff, but I fully support them, and I don't support this anti-Semitic shit that's going on campuses and things like that. But she passed. She didn't do it.
She won't. She just keeps missing those moments.
But she should if she wants to.
You got to seize on those moments, yeah. Those are your moments to shine. Those are your moments where you get to pull ahead of the rest of the race.
Right.
And she doesn't.
What has become known, thanks to Bill Clinton, as a sister soldier
moment. Yeah.
And she had that opportunity, especially on Fox, because that's when she's talking to people like us.
That would have been a huge win for her.
It absolutely would have been. And she passed on it, and I just think overall that interview was a disaster for her, even though, like I said, two things in her favor. She went on, that's in her favor right there, and she didn't fall into the basket of deplorables trap. Good for you, Kamala, but everything else, she screwed up.
Got to do better, yeah.
Mike, one last thing I want to bring up about the campaign. I read there's a full page thing in the Times today about Jill Stein, and they're already blaming Jill Stein
for the loss,
for losing if they lose.
Because she pulls that certain percentage of the vote away from
now,
the party.
What do you think of that?
They're not wrong. Third-party candidates draw, votes away from the person, so it can have an effect. Especially, let's just say, for argument's sake, folks, that the polling out there right now is absolutely spot on correct, and that they are in fact neck and neck, right? Let's just say that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So Jill Stein, let's just say, folks, that the polling is absolutely spot on correct right now, and they actually are neck and neck throughout the country, Trump and Harris. Okay? So if they're within a point of each other during this race, and Jill Stein pulls 2 or 3 points off of Harris, guess what? Trump goes over the top and wins. So they're not wrong in saying what they're saying, If you're measuring it in metrics like that, they're not necessarily wrong, She is drawing away from their main focus, their main candidate, She's drawing away from what the party's focus is. Not just, voters, but resources and time and everything else. Because now they have to defend themselves on 2 fronts rather than 1.
Okay, now, in this article, she, it was a lot of her talking, and she said, forget the lesser of 2 evil things. She says, we need to fight for the greater good. So she does stand for something. There are going to be minor candidates out there. There's any side that loses always blames that, right?
Sure.
We could blame almost every Republican loss in a close race on the Libertarian candidate. right?
You could say it because they pull a couple of percentage points. Yeah.
They do all the time, especially in certain states like New Hampshire and Wisconsin and places like that.
Yep.
But these, again, in a campaign, you got to beat these people. You gotta just overcome certain things. You can't blame. The Democrats blamed Ralph Nader back in 2000 for losing to Bush.
Yep.
The first Bush, said it was Ross Perot's fault. Again, you have to win an election, so I'm not saying that you give in to the crazies, right? You can't always give in to the crazies. And in the Republican world, the Libertarians are the crazies. In the Democratic world, the Greens are the crazies. But you can try to incorporate them in. I just think it's totally unfair. This woman stands for whatever it is she stands for. And unless Kamala Harris gives people a reason to vote for her instead of Jill Stein, that's on Kamala Harris. That's not on Jill Stein. Jill Stein is there. I'm sure a lot of it's ego and to sell books and all of that sort of stuff.
Sure, absolutely.
But she is who she is. She's on the ballot. It's not a surprise.
She's been doing this a long time.
Right. And the Republicans have the same problem with libertarian candidates. Gary Johnson, I still believe, hurt Trump. But then you got to think of something else also, right? Who's to say that the people who are going to vote for Jill Stein would vote for Kamala Harris if Jill Stein dropped out? They just might choose not to vote.
Yeah, a lot of them probably wouldn't.
Right, because I know a lot of libertarians who will never vote for Trump.
Yeah, I know.
Never vote for Trump, because Trump's a big government sort of a guy sometimes.
Well, he was during his first campaign. I mean, look at his first administration. He wasn't... everybody calls him like this conservative patriot, whatever. He's a patriot, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to say he's not patriot. But like conservative, probably in some ways conservative, but overall he's more of a centrist, right? He didn't like, defund half the government his first time around. He didn't go in there and try and cut every program.
Not at all.
He actually spent quite a bit of money, and if he was conservative, like a real conservative, he wouldn't have spent anywhere near the amounts he spent. But given you got to add in the COVID money and spending into that, and that was different, but still, he spent a lot of money. Even with the COVID money removed, he spent a lot of money.
Right, but that's his problem with, Paul Ryan type conservatives. I'm talking about libertarians. Libertarians are a different breed, just like the Jill Stein voters are a different breed.
Yeah, they're absolutely committed to their cause, and they're not going to come out and vote Trump, just like Jill Stein's voters are not just going to necessarily go out and vote Harris. You're right. And
that's my thought. So I mean, again, I don't know if that's the case or not. But when they blame her, if Kamala Harris blames her loss should she lose on Jill Stein, that's wrong.
It's their responsibility to overcome that number and capture those voters.
Exactly. And again, who knows? I would venture to guess most people who are going to vote for Jill Stein wouldn't vote for Kamala Harris even if Jill Stein wasn't in the race, because otherwise why would they be voting for Jill Stein? Yeah. They would vote for Kamala Harris anyway. Same thing with the Libertarians. They're not going to vote for Trump. They're not going to vote for Harris.
I think some will. I think some Libertarians will.
No, they're going to vote. But a lot of them will. I'm talking about real Libertarians.
The hardcore.
They're going to vote for the Libertarian candidate.
The hardcore ones will, yes.
Period. Absolutely. That's who they're going to vote for. And should that Libertarian candidate drop out for whatever reason, there's no reason to believe they would en masse go to Trump.
Then go for Trump.
Right. Yeah. We know they won't go to Harris.
Yeah.
But what we don't know is how many of them will go to Trump. So anyway, what are your thoughts here 2 weeks out, Mike? I know we're not in the prediction business, but what's your thoughts on the campaign?
The momentum is definitely behind Trump. I think he's gaining more and more ground every day. It's becoming more and more obvious he has that momentum. So I think, like I said, I feel confident in a Trump win as long as we all go out and vote. You have to get out and vote. You can't sit on the sidelines. You got to get out and vote.
I don't know if I would use the word confident for the way I feel. I definitely agree with you. I think the wind's at his back right now. I think he is running by orders of magnitude a better campaign now than he ran in 2020 and even in 2016.
Yeah.
I think his campaign this year is much more focused than it was.
Oh, yeah, without doubt.
Yeah, he still does his crazy shit sometimes and says his crazy shit sometimes.
Crazy.
But overall, I mean, he's just the other day went into a barbershop in the
for
Bronx,
an hour, and
just chatting with people.
Yep.
I think he's making a lot more of an attempt to outreach to all different, diverse types of people.
Yeah, he's doing rallies in deep blue states. He went to California, everywhere else.
Which, like I said in our last video, I think is more about helping get the congressmen in those areas elected.
Well, that's what it is. It's the down ballot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's a lot more focused. Just one thing that I think he might be doing wrong, I don't know. It was a little bit of an argument among in his campaign. Trump was quoted as saying this election is about immigration. And a lot of people in his campaign were arguing with him and saying, no, you got to focus on the inflation.
Yeah, 100%.
You agree?
Yeah. And look, I think immigration, it's hard because it's kind of both, honestly. It really is kind of both. Because you have this migrant waves coming in, right, which is obviously part of what's driving the inflation, because you have to print all this extra money to pay them.
That's a good point.
To pay for all them. So they're taxing resources, they're printing more money to pay for all that, and they're creating a crime wave along with it. So that's very much prevalent in people's minds. But the inflation is what hurts the majority of people. You know, I mean, God help.
Because the inflation touches everybody.
Every single person, regardless.
Not every area in America is touched by the illegal immigration, but every area is touched by inflation.
Probably most people won't see the actual effect of the immigration, right? The average American is not going to wake up and find 20,000 Haitians in their backyard, right?
Eating the dogs.
They're eating the cats. You know, but it's true though. Like, most people aren't going to deal with that kind of situation. That's kind of I don't want to say anomalous because it's become common for the most part recently, but even still, it's not something most people are going to deal with. But everybody's going to go to the store and see bread being $2 more, you know, for a loaf, or milk being another $1 a gallon.
Yes, I agree.
And those things add up. You know, if you're living on a certain amount of money and you're not making that kind of money, and the manufacturing base is gone, everything is gone, jobs are not what they used to be, that hurts. And I think that's really where the focus is. But the two are so inextricably tied together right now that I don't think you can really separate them necessarily.
Maybe not, but Trump is insisting that immigration is the main issue, you know, because obviously that's probably the main reason he won in 2016, right, was the immigration issue.
The wall carried him forward,
But this is 2024.
Things have changed a bit, and it needs to be more...
I believe that James Carville was right in 1992, and will always be right. It is the economy, stupid. If the economy were okay right now, I should say the economy, economic foundations are all right. But inflation, things like that, your everyday things, your pocketbook economy is bad. If it weren't, then yes, focus on inflation. Like in 2016, the economy wasn't a mess, so you could focus on inflation.
Immigration, yeah.
So you could vote right. I'm sorry, you could focus on immigration.
Sure.
This year, again, do I think it's going to make that big of a difference? Maybe, maybe not. But like you said, in this kind of a race, every vote counts. Maybe he should try to focus a little bit more on.
I think he hits both subjects pretty well. I mean, he talks a lot about the economy. He also talks a lot about immigration.
Yeah.
I think he hits both of them pretty well. I don't think he's really missing any key components in that campaign with that. I think he hits at the core of the problems for the most part that are facing Americans now. So I think he does a pretty good job with that.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we don't know. The election's not being held today. Whatever the polls are, they're just representing how people feel today.
Get out and vote. Vote early.
I think if
Bank your vote.
Gun to my head, if I had to make a prediction, I think Trump wins, and I think he wins fairly easily in the electoral vote. Not the popular vote, probably not, but if he wins, it'll be slight. But the electoral vote, just from the things that I'm reading and the stuff in these swing states, he's got a real good shot at sweeping those swing states, let alone just winning enough. Like Michigan, Wisconsin.
He's got a really good shot. His numbers are.
Georgia.
That's the thing about it, those polling numbers, and it's from very liberal networks. Their polling numbers in the swing states, he's climbing every day, and it's kind of. Honestly, it's kind of surprising to me that they would even report that, because they normally, in years past, would try and ignore it.
They report it.
But they're reporting it, and
they have to put the poll numbers out.
You're seeing these things, climb higher and higher.
Listen, he's never polled this well at all, ever. He's never seen numbers like... 49% is not something, it's not Reagan number, but for him, that's tremendous.
A significant jump from
and if he wins 49% of the popular vote, he's going to win this election easily, electoral. The electoral vote wise. Yeah. So again, who knows? It's going to be a tense night.
We'll see. We're getting there. We're not far off now, folks. But definitely remember the 26th, 6 days. Yep. Early voting begins. Go out, vote early. Bank your vote in New York. I'm sorry, folks. In New York, go out, bank your vote, get it in early. That way, if there's any shenanigans or just something just goes wrong for whatever reason, the vote is in. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I'm still going on election day. I like that.
I do too, but I'm like, I get the bank your vote thing. So
I get it too. Vote. Yeah, listen, you got to play by the rules, whatever the rules are at the time. Yep. These are the rules now, so do what you got to do. Yep. I still think these mail-in ballots scare the hell out of me, Mike.
I don't like mail-in balloting. I think it's
anytime you have too many steps involved.
Yeah, well, it's too easy to corrupt that system.
Yeah, and even just too easy to make mistakes. Even just not corruption. It could even just be errors.
Not corrupt.
It's just not
just corruption and intentional, but in corruption and just in the sense of
that
that
it
could go wrong. Yeah, it's corrupted. Like you could never really audit that system well enough to be sure that it's actually working the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, it concerns me a lot. It should concern everybody, and that's what I don't understand about Democrats. Why would anybody be against anything that keeps the system intact? And that's why people believe that elections are stolen and believe in all the corruption, because if the Democrats wanted to stop that, wanted to not have people questioning, the validity of the 2020 election or whatever, then stop standing in the way of voter ID, stop standing in the way of paper ballots to be counted by human beings.
It's oppositional politics. That's what it's become now.
Let people at least believe that there's integrity there and that there isn't anything to worry about, because once you open that door, then even if there's not, there's always going to be the feeling that there is. And
because you leave enough room for doubt, and now the doubt's going to grow.
And they shoot themselves in the foot with that. There's just no reason to be against showing an ID to go vote. For crying out loud, you can't go pick your kid up at school
without showing ID.
Yep. So let's stop with this nonsense that certain types of people can't get IDs. That's ridiculous. You can't get into a public building. You can't get into a courthouse. You can't get into it. Like I said, you literally can't get your kid out of school without presenting your ID to the security guard at the front desk. There's no reason to not have that. There's no reason to object to keeping voter rolls clean. There's no reason to object to having hand counted by human beings, double checked, not having 5 people in a chain of custody. Anything that could make people less skeptical would work in the Democrats' favor, in my opinion, because it would get rid of any validity to the argument that elections are stolen. But
it's oppositional politics. That's what we have now. We have this oppositional politics where if one side's for it, then the other side has to be against it. Like there's no in between anymore.
But it's just,
and that's what we got. But that's what needs to change. That's what needs to shift, and we need to get away from.
But this one, I just don't understand.
There should be a universal. Every American should want,
because, like I said, I think
secure elections. Period.
I think it would help them. Like looking.
Well, you want to be sure that your candidates are actually getting a fair shot, and that they're actually winning because they're being voted for, not because somebody decided it.
And to the Democrats, like I said, if they don't want
there's doubt
that a lot of Republicans have, then work with Republicans to remove that doubt. And then if people start screaming elections were stolen, then you can call them idiots. Because you can say, well, look at all these safety things we put in place.
And there's so many safety measures protecting the vote now.
Yeah. I don't know. Do that. But gun to my head, I think Trump has a fairly easy electoral victory. Very close popular vote. I don't know which way it goes, but who cares? As long as he wins the Electoral College. Maybe we'll do an episode one day, because there's a lot of people out there saying they don't like the Electoral College. Maybe one day we'll do an episode on that. They don't understand
what it actually is, and why it exists.
I mean, there's good. Listen, the founders argued over it. Some wanted it, some didn't. So it's not an invalid argument. But I think it would be a good thing maybe to do a episode.
We can definitely do that. We'll do that. We'll do an episode on that as well.
All right, Michael, I got to go watch the Met game.
All right. You guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell us your thoughts. Tell us what you think about what we discussed tonight. We want to hear your comments and get it back to us so we can go back and talk to you about it on the air.
And make predictions. Electoral predictions, popular vote predictions.
Who do you think's winning?
And then, if you're terribly wrong, we'll come back and shout you out and embarrass you a couple of days after the election. You're not going to be wrong. Everybody's going to be right? They're going to have different answers. How's everybody going to be right?
I don't know, but it'll happen.
Make your predictions.
Let us know what you're thinking, guys.
And if you're way off one way or the other, we will be more than happy to embarrass you right here on video. Mike, get your $200. You only got 2 weeks to save it up.
We appreciate you guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Yep. Share this out.
Get
your family and friends subscribe too. Help us out. Help us grow the channel.
Like Trump would say, get that fat pig of a husband off the couch.
Make him subscribe.
Get him out to vote and make him subscribe to the Dirt Road.
That's right.
Have a good one, guys. Good night.